that are in front of this country. What we've seen and continue to see, I think, by contrast from Chris Hipkins, is the way that he's carrying on the end of this campaign is the way that he started it, with personal attacks and a tremendous amount of negativity. And that is quite simply because we see a government that has no track record to run on, no ideas to take the country forward with, and so it's easy to become about fear-mongering and scaremongering and actually making it negative and personal. I'm also very happy to say, when I compare our fiscal plan to that of Labor's, that we are going to be very, very good and good for this country in managing our books, and that we have strong economic management to give us the platform that we need to invest in our public services and also in law and order. I've seen Grant Robertson's claims around our national fiscal plan, and I just have to say I don't take lectures from Grant Robertson or Chris Hipkins on the economy. They are an economic la-la land, and their track record of actually spending more, of taxing more and of borrowing more is bad news for New Zealand, and we have seen that over the last 6 years. And what we're seeing, frankly, is a fiscal plan from Labor that has some major holes in it, and we know that they cannot deliver. We see Grant Robertson has blown his operating allowances in his budget by $600 million each and every year. We see major flaws in the funding of the dental program, which has been presented as a free dental care program for under 30s. It's dishonest, it's not true, and we've also seen it with respect to not making the right calculations around how they cost their GST policy, which frankly is a stupid policy, because that money is not going to get through to a consumer, as Grant Robertson well knows, as Michael Cullen, leading the tax expert group, well knew as well. So for us, we look at it and we see a government that actually doesn't have the right financial plan to grow our economy so that we can actually build this country as we need to going forward. What we see is a government that frankly we think will continually serve and drive up more debt forever. We actually will miss its spending commitments. The deficits and debt will be with us for longer as a result of their poor financial planning. And then also they have big unfunded promises, up to $50 billion worth. Keep talking about light rail, but actually the $30 billion needed for that's not in this plan. Lake Onslow, $16 billion not included in that. Wellington light rail, not included. The income insurance scheme, not included. And so a lot of unfunded commitments financially. And as I said, when you've actually spent all the money, it's about up 80%. When you've taxed New Zealanders an extra $100 million plus a day, and you've increased government borrowing from $5 billion to over $100 billion, the only thing left to do is to continue to dream up wonderful new taxes, and that's exactly what we're going to see if Labour gets back in on Saturday night with Te Pāti Māori and the Greens. Both those parties have as major bottom lines increases in taxes and the creation of lots of new innovative new taxes, and they need to tax more, and they'll tax Kiwis more because they were addicted to spending and won't control their spending as a result. So my last message to Kiwis is that Saturday night is important. This election is really consequential. It really matters, and it boils down to who you trust to manage this economy so that you can actually work hard and get ahead, I think, in the best country in the world. And I just want everyone to think about it. If you wake up on Sunday morning and you find that Te Pāti Māori, the Greens and Labour are able to form a government, how is that going to feel? And so I'd just encourage all Kiwis to get out there now. We know New Zealanders want change. Vote for it, step up to the plate, and let's get this done. Let's get our country back on track and moving forward positively. With that, happy to take any questions you may have.
Labor's saying you'll need to cut $3 billion more of spending in order to fund it. Are they right?
No. We've had our plans independently verified by economists, as you well know. We've had other economists say they're quite plausible, quite possible. And as I said, our independent reviewers have said our assumptions are very prudent. And more importantly, what we've also done is we've built in buffer within our tax plan, but also within our broader fiscal plan as well. So we are incredibly confident with our plan. But what I can tell you doesn't stack up is a dental policy. And I got to say, this is pretty dishonest from Chris Hipkins. He goes out there promoting that actually there's going to be free dental care for under 30s. And the reality was, and that's what's been used on that's the advertising. That's what he's been saying, free dental care for under 30s. And then today it's quite obvious it's not going to be free dental care. Under 30s are going to be paying thousands of dollars for their dental care. And as a result, Chris Hipkins, frankly, he's the Prime Minister, but he's actually the prime misinformer, and he's continuing his campaign of misinformation.
The question is about cuts, so you can guarantee right here and now that you won't cut a single dollar more than you've said in your your fiscal plan?
Yeah, we've been really clear. Look, there's been so much increase in government spending and departmental budgets, as you well know, that we are saying we want a 6.5% reduction in those departmental costs. We're going to task the CEOs to do that. How they deliver that, by stopping dumb and wasteful spending and projects that they have people assigned to make sure that they actually are aligned to the outcomes that we're asking them to deliver, is completely achievable.
And even
completely
if there's a
achievable.
shortfall from things like the foreign buyers tax, you won't be making up for that with more cuts?
We want to see our public service delivering for New Zealanders, and we are in a ridiculous situation.
You're guaranteeing that you won't cut any
Well,
more.
I'm guaranteeing to you that we're not going to hire 13,000 more public servants, spend almost $2 billion on consultants and contractor fees, and deliver worse waiting lists at hospitals, worse academic outcomes for education for our kids, worse crime outcomes, and a failing economy. That's not going to happen under us.
You seem to be leaving the door open, though, that there is that one chance of the $3.1 billion being cut out of public service every year. Is that true?
No, it's in our fiscal plan. We want a 6.5% reduction out of departmental costs. That's our commitment. That's what we want to achieve. That's on average across all the core government departments. But what I'd again say to you is, no disrespect, I'm not taking lectures from Hipkins and Robertson, who have mismanaged our economy so badly and will go down as a terrible period for New Zealand over the last 6 years. And actually, when you have a dental program like they've promised it's free dental care for under 30s, it's completely dishonest. It's utterly dishonest.
But $3.1 billion, that's off the table. That's not correct.
Yes, absolutely, it's off the table. I mean, that's Grant Robertson wanting to share misinformation again with his CTU mates, and we get all that. But we're not about that. We understand the economy. We understand the economics. We know how we're going to run it. National governments have done it before. We have to come in and clean up the ungodly mess that the Labor Party has left behind, and we're going to do that. And we're going to stick to our fiscal plan, which we've outlined in great detail. We've had independently verified by economists. We've had other economists say it's completely plausible and possible, and we've had our independent people say that we've been incredibly conservative and prudent and responsible as well. So I'm very comfortable with our numbers and our plan, but we are going to make sure that we actually generate a public service that delivers for New Zealand and doesn't just spend and increase costs and not deliver outcomes and results.
These accusations of...
Could the Port Waikato by-election be good news for National, essentially an extra MP for free?
Well, what we're really focused on is the general election, and what I want the people of the Port Waikato to understand is they need to go out and vote and party vote because that is counted, and we will deal with the by-election on the other side of this general election. But right now, the focus is on the general election and making sure the people of Port Waikato understand they still need to vote, and they need to vote party vote, and if they want change, they should party vote National.
By-elections always
have
have...
that possibility of a second election if coalition negotiations go poorly.
Sorry?
Why won't you rule out that possibility of a second election if coalition negotiations go poorly?
Oh, look, I spoke about this, and my position's really clear. We have been very obviously saying we want to widen the National party vote as much as possible. Beyond that, we think a strong, stable coalition with ACT is in the best interest of New Zealand, and I will certainly pick up the phone and talk to Mr Peters in New Zealand First if it means avoiding Te Pāti Māori, the Greens and Labour, and that chaos and increasing taxes for the New Zealand people, and all that results from that as a result, and I'll make that work.
But then why bring up the idea of a second election at all?
It's just an acknowledgement that MMP elections are incredibly close, and there's a range of uncertainties that are occurred in any MMP election or any MMP environment. But, at the end of the day, what we have to understand is what New Zealanders need. And New Zealanders are saying they want change, that the government is heading in the wrong direction. It has not delivered for New Zealanders over the last 6 years, and as a consequence, my ask is that you step up to the plate. If you want the change, you have to deliver the change, and that means party vote National. Even if you're an undecided voter, and maybe you've never voted for National before, but we know that we are getting lots of people who have never voted for us before who are actually wanting to step up and deliver that change.
Are you fear-mongering by not ruling that out, though?
We're just saying there's uncertainty in any MMP election, but what's important is we cannot tolerate, mortgage rates going through the roof. We cannot tolerate people not being able to afford food, rent, fuel. We cannot tolerate crime being out of control. We cannot tolerate our kids failing in our education system or our healthcare system in crisis that's not there when people need it. And so that's what New Zealanders care about, and that's what I'm going to deliver for them on the other side of this election if I'm lucky enough to be elected.
Do you think Kiwis would tolerate a second election, though? This has already been quite a long one in itself.
I don't think that will be what we're saying is under MMP elections there's uncertainty, but what New Zealanders cannot tolerate is another 3 years of a government that has chronically under-delivered for them. And as we're seeing today, hasn't even costed its policies properly, won't be able to deliver them. New Zealanders are sick of the non-delivery of a Labour government. How on earth do you have a 3-year absolute majority and not deliver anything for Kiwis and have every outcome go backwards? It's a unique and special skill that this government has had to spend more, to hire more, to borrow more, to tax more and deliver worse outcomes. It's a very special skill that Chris Hipkins and Grant Robertson have.
Would you have expected a heads up from Chris Hipkins about the date of the by-election, consultation rather than sort of hearing about it through the grapevine this morning?
Look, I spoke to the Prime Minister this morning about some preliminary dates. I presume that he's announced the date just recently before we started this press conference.
And what about voter apathy? I mean, by-elections always have pretty bad turnouts. We've spoken to voters in Pukekohe already are saying it's a waste of time.
Well, again, the focus needs to be on the general election. I want the people of Port Waikato to understand that actually their vote matters, that actually their party vote matters, because that's how we change governments. That's how we get a strong, stable government on the other side that will deliver for New Zealanders. And so I want them focused on that. We'll deal with the by-election afterwards.
Will Andrew Bailey run it again, or is there a scenario where you say, hey, you're 16th on the list, take that list spot and we'll get a new candidate?
I think Andrew Bailey's been an outstanding local MP for Port Waikato. I mean, he works incredibly hard for the people. He understands the area and the region well. He's built strong relationships and he's advocated for so many of those constituents. I think he'll be an outstanding local MP.
And just on FTAs, I mean, okay, you want to get one with India. For them, an FTA with dairy, they're not going to want it. For us, an FTA without dairy is pointless.
I'll tell you what's pointless is that over 6 years, two-way trade with India has gone from 2.8 billion down to 2.3 billion. It's the most populous country on earth this year. It's going to be our third largest economy in the world by 2030. And when you look at almost two-way trade with China at almost $40 billion, it's clear that we are chronically under-trading in India. And the problem is this. During the COVID period, the Australians managed to negotiate an early harvest free trade agreement. The Brits, the Canadians and the Europeans have done similarly, and we haven't even picked up the phone, managed those relationships because we've been so internally myopically focused over the last 6 years, when actually we are a country of 5 million people that needs to hustle, and we need to get out the world with some confidence and some ambition and some aspiration, be building those relationships, punching above our weight and doing what we've done best in our past. But the last 6 years, New Zealand has lost ground against the other countries in the world. And our standing in the world has slipped. And so we need to rediscover that. And that's what Todd and I are talking about today, is that we are going to be a forward-leaning, externally oriented country that gets out in the world and sells the best products and services to the world. And the government can help open up those doors, and then businesses need to go in and actually step up and convert it. And that's what we're going to do.
My question is about bargaining, though. Given that they're unlikely to accept an FTA with dairy involved in it, what power would we have? Would there be carve-outs? What do we have that they want?
Well, what I'd say to you is that we appreciate it's difficult, but we don't start from an assumption that we're going to make, we're going to do everything we can to get as much value out of that relationship as we possibly can for New Zealand. Australia has actually, when you look at the, as we talked about today, Todd talked about, the reality if you're an Australian exporter of wine and the tariffs that you pay in India now versus a New Zealand wine exporter, or I was talking to people who are exporting apples to India. They've almost got double the tariffs as a New Zealand operator versus if they actually send their apples out from Australia. And so, those are things that we need to be doing everything we can to deepen the trading relationship with India. And there's lots of other things that we can be doing to build the flows of people-to-people connections, trade, capital, information that flows as a result of that. So, again, it's a mindset issue. And this government has not had that hustling mindset. And as a result, we've been so myopic, so inward-focused, so internally focused over the last 6 years that the rest of the world has left us behind. When Australia has actually rebuilt its international students to pre-COVID levels and we're still at half-time. Sorry. Yeah.
Over Nelson,
So I'll come to you.
Nelson, one of the biggest issues for those guys is that Nelson Hospital rebuild. What's the National Party's policy on that?
Well, we're going to increase our health budgets each and every year. As you know, we've built in $8 billion worth of unallocated capital expenditure over the period of our fiscal plan. And we want to try and move the money we will move the money from the centre and the bureaucracy out to the frontline services, whether that's hospitals, doctors, nurses, primary care.
How much money and when would construction start
Well, what we've said is that we will look at that in government. We understand the need in Nelson. We understand the need all across the country. But when you go spend $500 million restructuring DHBs into Health New Zealand and creating mega bureaucracies, that's money that could have frankly been spent on Nelson Hospital. When you go write off $500 million worth of expired rapid antigen tests because you over order and the inventory expires, that funds a lot of hospitals. When we look at Dunedin Hospital, for example, one where the scope of that hospital has been pulled back dramatically, we have made a commitment to spend money there. Obviously Nelson, and there's others that are on our list that we want to look at, but our idea is to increase spending each and every year to get the money out of the centre to the front line, and also we have unallocated capital that we can use as well through the period of our financial plan.
Why is your candidate campaigning on this so hard though? Granted, there isn't actually a policy in place, that Nelson voters can look to say, this is how much money we'll get and this is when it'll start.
Well, it is on Shane Retty and my radar. It is something that we are well aware of, and Blair's done a brilliant job of actually advocating for that. When we get to government, we need to look at a series of hospital investments. We understand that, and we have it on our radar. It's in our it's right there. But we need to get into government and identify exactly that when we say we're going to do something, we do it in the National Party. We don't say something then turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off. We don't say we're going to go build a Dunedin hospital, and it hasn't even started in 6 years. This is a government that hasn't started and completed a single major transport project, for example, in 6 years. So, we don't do that. When we say we're going to do something, we do it and we follow through and we deliver it properly, and that's what we just want to do. When we get to government, look at it all, see the capital needs, understand what else is needed, and then we'll make those commitments.
Last question, please.
Expecting a phone call from you on election night.
We've ruled Te Pāti Māori out. We have ruled them out, and no, we won't be.
Regarding the increasing conflict in Israel-Palestine, in the past, New Zealand has taken quite a strong stance against Israeli settlements and passed resolutions in the UN under John Key. Do you see like a government you'd lead continuing that?
Well, what I'd say first of all is that,
or any change, based on what's happened recently.
Well, what I'd say is that all New Zealanders are shocked and saddened by what they've seen, and that those Hamas attacks on Israel causing massive civilian casualties to innocent civilians is just not right, and that's why we stand with Israel and its right to defend itself, frankly, and that's our position. That's our long-standing position.
The question is about that. New Zealand has taken quite a strong stance against what Israel is doing in Palestine.
Well, our long-standing.
Would you be continuing that, or obviously ACT has got quite a strong policy around Israel as well?
Well, we support Israel's right to defend itself in the face of Hamas terrorist attacks, which we've just seen, that are causing huge pain and suffering to civilians. It's unwarranted.
You'd look to continue essentially New Zealand's foreign policy.
We look to continue the policy, the long-standing policy, which is that we want to see a two-state solution emerge peacefully and diplomatically, and that's what we continue to support.
Compared to previous governments, you're basically saying it'll be the same, or can you see a difference?
As I said, we're committed to the long-standing position of a two-state solution emerging, and making sure that happens in a peaceful and diplomatic way. But I want to be crystal clear. The attacks from Hamas on Israel are unjustified, and they are causing huge suffering for civilians, innocent civilians, and we stand with Israel and its right to defend itself.
The Melbourne District Council hearing today passed a business case for Wakatoa Kotahi paying for a significant chunk of the horrendous costs of loss of access to the Marlborough Sounds. Is that something that you would support, a very significant government contribution?
Well, what we want to do is we want to work with local government in quite a different way, and what we have said to local governments and the local government conference, and spoken to many of the mayors and all of the district councils who are well aware of our position, is that we want to do what we call city and regional deals, and essentially that is what has worked well in the UK, but predominantly in Australia as well, where actually central and local government come together, identify the critical infrastructure, and in this case it might be hospitals, it could be roading, it could be climate adaptation work. We agree what that set is, and then we agree the funding and financing between the two parties. We lock and load it so that whether the politicians lose their jobs, not everything gets turned off, turned on again, it actually carries on, because that's clearly a 10-year program of work. And so each of the sub-regions of New Zealand are many of them are already preparing their asks, and they're coming together with their neighbouring district councils to actually say, this is what we need in the Hawke's Bay, this is what we need in Southland, this is what we need on the West Coast, and the same would be here as well. So, we want to work with the mayors. I think it has been a punch and Judy show between central and local government. At the end of the day, we are delivering for New Zealanders, and actually I want us united on delivering for New Zealanders and getting outcomes. So what is the critical infrastructure infrastructure that has the most amount of difference to the most amount of people in the fastest amount of time. Let's agree that. Let's agree how we're going to fund it between us, and then lock it up for 10 years, and let's get to work, because there's an awful lot of talk in New Zealand but not a lot of action, and we need to get a lot more action.
The rating base, like
well, that's the point, is that actually we need to find funding mechanisms, and there is a lot of internationally small advanced economies with many of the same challenges of New Zealand use different funding and financing mechanisms to be able to do that. So our message is really simple. We'll have a 30-year pipeline of infrastructure projects through Infrastructure New Zealand, just like we see Infrastructure Australia do. We'll do 10-year city and regional deals that will be different by sub-regions of New Zealand. And importantly, the third piece is that we'll have a national infrastructure agency rather than regional provincial growth funds or tourism acceleration funds. We'll build that out of Crown infrastructure partners and actually have an ability to actually get funding and financing in place. And as you well know, we have such a big infrastructure deficit in New Zealand. We're also open to using private funding so that we can actually accelerate the creation of roads and new housing and all of those good things that we desperately need to see.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Sorry, mate.
Do you believe dinosaurs roamed the earth?
Sorry?
Do you believe dinosaurs roamed the earth?
Absolutely. What kind of question is that, mate?
Okay, thanks very much, everyone.
You didn't have still in there, did you?